Hey up, welcome back for part 2. Let's just get stuck straight into it. You've been to quite a few tracks then and stuff?
Yeah, I met your dad at... I was walking over the bridge at Cadwell a few years ago to the vintage sports car meet, and he should be there, but...
Is that when he was on his bike?
No, he'd gone with one of his neighbours or a friend.
I know who you mean, yeah.
Who's got into...
I can't remember his name now. No, the bloke. He had a Kawasaki H2.
Well, he wasn't motorbike racing.
No.
It was.
He went there for a ride with my brother recently. Yeah,
VSCC, which both Janice and I have got into big style. I love it.
Oh, you both like it then?
Oh yeah.
Do you go in the camper then to go to tracks as well?
I've been to Silverstone to the Classic there. I'll go to Mallory again this year because there's a unique race at Mallory. It's all cars pre-1918.
Yeah. Wow.
And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
The driving is, you see the driver drive. You know, he's got a steering wheel size of a ship's
platter
rudder, and they're fighting it all the way through the corners. And tyres about as big as modern mountain bikes have got bigger tyres.
yeah.
And they've got maybe, I don't know, a 27-litre Dirac engine or something like that.
No power steering there, is there?
Oh, well, you don't need it because you just drift them.
Yeah.
You drift them. And especially at Mallory, because there's, I don't know if you've ever been, but Gerrard's, it's one of the best corners in motor racing, in small clubs. And viewing's good. But Cadwell's a nice site. You
ever been to any of the European tracks?
I've been to, funnily enough, we were only talking about the other day, one of the guys who used to sell plastic to us used to race a 2CVs.
All right, yeah.
And everybody laughs when you say 2CVs.
Not
but
much
we went
racing
to a place called, well, there's plenty of racing, believe me.
Between them, I suppose, yeah.
There is. Well, the last lap at one race, there were 7 cars and 5 leaders in the last lap.
Yeah.
All racing neck and neck.
Yeah.
In fact, I always used to say if it's a wet race, they tie them together for safety.
Yeah.
But we went to a place there called Saint Paul near Arras in France. And he said, do you fancy going over? So I thought I'll make it as a bit of a booze cruise. In those days, you went to Calais, picked up your booze for you. And so we went over. It was probably late on, maybe autumn, September, maybe, I can't remember. And maybe it might have been late August.
Yeah.
And we found that all the hotels had been booked up by this crew because it was quite surprising around the world. And we found the local boozer, which was the Hotel Stella Artois, which is handy. It's always a good name, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the guy who said, well, I've got one room left. So we'd no camper, we'd done it in the car.
Yeah.
So Janice and I went up in this room and the toilet was down the corridor and we just had a wash basin.
Yeah.
And there was only one of us could get out of bed at any time. It was that small room.
Yeah, a bit compact.
Yeah, it was very compact.
Yeah.
But then the next day when the Après motor racing was brilliant. Everybody got pissed in the bar.
Yeah.
And the food was superb as well. In France, you know what it's like.
Yeah, it's good stuff, isn't it?
So the following year or 2 years after, I think they missed a year, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law came with us.
Yeah.
But we got organised and went in the same hotel as the racers.
Yeah.
And it was just a rip. It really was. It was superb.
Good fun.
And again, the food, it was about the food. Forget the racing. The racing was good fun while it lasted, but...
It's a good event.
Everybody, decent wine, brandy, you name it.
Yeah.
Super.
It's nice that you did all that stuff with Janice as well.
Oh, yeah, well, she's always been... When I was rallying, she didn't go as much because I was she was looking after the kids.
Yeah.
And I was tending to just have it as like I go to a local football match, Saturdays and stuff like that. Mm. But we did go to a lot of other meetings. At first she wasn't that keen, but then when we got into the vintage stuff...
Yeah, she liked it.
Well, because it's so interactive. You go to Le Mans, go to a Grand Prix, and you're sat with 200,000 people. Mm. We went to the Belgian Grand Prix. I've only ever been to 2 Grand Prix, and that was to see Nigel Mansell win at Silverstone.
Yeah.
And I went with a couple of guys from work.
Yeah.
And then we went to the Belgian Grand Prix, and it was fantastic the day before.
That's Spa, is it?
Spa, yeah. Francorchamps.
Good track, isn't it?
Right, well, yeah,
Amazing.
except on the Saturday we drove through and had a look and found our way to the site. And then on the Sunday, it was wonderful. There were bands playing. It was a real party atmosphere. All the bars were open, people in the streets. Next morning, we took the caravan from the campsite, just opened the curtains on the caravan, and it was like you couldn't see the other side of the campsite. It was just foggy and misty.
Yeah.
Typical,
yeah.
Ardennes weather sort of thing.
Yeah.
Ardèche weather, sorry. I get them wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, that part of Belgium.
Yeah.
And I've been on drier rallies. It peed it down.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, but
I've been on dry. I've never heard that before.
But it was.
I know exactly what you mean now. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was when we were. It was when there was a big battle between Michael Schumacher and Hanno Mikkola. And Hanno Mikkola.
Mickey Hakkinen, is that how you say it?
Yeah, it is. It's Mickey Hakkinen. And a dreary day in Spa, which was being dominated by Schumacher, which was deservedly being won by him because it was raining, it was wet. It was just beginning to, sunshine was beginning to shine. Yeah. And the barbecues were just about to get lit in the German supporters because, of course, in Belgium there is lots.
About to win.
It's not fair to travel by Panzer or by road.
Okay. It's pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. And basically I can't remember if it was the third, fourth or fifth lap before the end of it, he managed to get past him, did Hakkinen, and he won the race. And the Germans, well, by the time the flag had dropped, they'd all got off in a huff, and half the Germans had filled the roads going out because the hero had been beaten. So
pissed them off.
Yeah, which was a bit of a shame, but I did quite like him. He was a good driver, Finnish driver, and for McLaren. Yeah. So I was shouting for him, not Schumacher.
Yeah, cool track as well, isn't it?
Right, certainly
I know it well because of all the video games nowadays. So
yeah,
it's great. It's a cool track.
Yeah, that's
what do they call it? Eau Rouge, when they.
Well, sadly, Stefan Beloff got killed there in a Group C race, and I had that on a video. Yeah. And it doesn't look a big crash, but it was, because in those days the cars bent like bananas. And I think he clipped him, and Jackie Hicks touched, and he went off into the Armco and was killed. And he was one of the best German drivers that never was, really, Stefan Beloff. Yeah. I'd watched his career. Yeah. And he was a world champion in the making.
That's the problem with it, isn't it? The danger of it and everything.
But well, now it's a lot safer.
Yeah, it's not like it was. Yeah. I mean, there was a crash a few years ago when they started doing the halos on the F1 cars, wasn't there?
Yes,
the guy hit when the bottom of the truck.
Yeah, well, it was a JCB type thing hit, I think. Yeah. He was I think he was from Monaco as well as Leclerc.
Do you still watch it now?
Yes, I watched it the other day. I quite enjoyed it. I'm sad. I shouldn't say this, but with Formula One, it's not about the country and it's not necessarily about the team. No. So I've not really. I won't say I'm an anti.
I know what you mean. Now it's like about the sport generally, isn't it? I was asking someone that the other day, like, which team do you support? It's like, I just watched the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a bit like being a horse racing pundit. My fun of motor racing is I don't listen to all the drivel at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I don't listen to much of it at the end. Funnily enough, I did this last weekend because I was only interested in what they had to say about Alonso, because I've always rated Alonso. I think he's the Spanish equivalent of Nigel Mansell.
Yeah.
You know, Nigel Mansell was a fantastic entertainer, but as soon as he got out of the car, he went, you like Birmingham accent. No, although he didn't come from Birmingham, he lived I think he was born at Upton-on-Severn, which is in Warwickshire or Worcestershire.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about what he said out the car, it was what he did in it.
The driving, wasn't it? Yeah.
You know, and but yeah, it's been a love affair of a bit like choosing the winner of the Grand National.
Yeah.
You look at the form and see what's going, and there's no two ways about it. Murray Walker was right that Jenson Button was going to be a world champion first time he saw him.
Yeah.
But there's been disappointments. There was the likes of Rubens Barrichello. I saw him in a Toyota, Tom's Toyota.
Yeah.
Tom's racing car,
Yeah.
the Toyota engine in Formula 2, and he won the British Formula 2 or Formula 3 championship on two wheels.
Yeah.
He came round the corners. I think it was Snetterton. Do you know? I forget these days. And it was on BBC TV, and he came down the corner on two wheels, back on the road, and off he went. And
Is that like touring cars?
No, that was open wheel racing.
Formula 2, Formula 3.
Yeah, I think it was a Formula 3 championship.
Yeah.
And I thought, he's a world champion in the making, but sadly he never got there, through one thing or another.
Funny to say, what you're saying is it's nice to like watch the drivers sort of,
Yeah.
where they progress through their career and that, and move to different teams and stuff.
Yeah.
I think people are into that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like, that's the big part of it.
Well, it's motor racing's. It's a bit like bridges motor racing. If you don't know how to play it, now don't try and pretend you do. It's one of these sports that you got to immerse yourself in, and I can see why podcasts and things like that are keen.
People talking about it.
It's infinitely more exciting than somebody kicking a pig's bladder around a field.
Not keen on that.
No, but I do like rugby union.
Yeah.
We both like rugby union.
There's more technique in it, isn't there? And
But as I've
a bit
always
like war,
said,
isn't it?
they're all having a go at the moment. But motor racing's organised cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's about 10 telephone directories, if you remember what telephone directories were.
Yeah.
Full, and I don't mean English ones, I mean American ones, full of rules and regulations. And then somebody goes through them like Adrian Newey and decides what he can and can't do and builds a car to that specification. I mean, one of the classics, I used to love touring cars, watched a lot of touring cars, was the Alfa Romeo 155 Silverstone that won the touring car championship.
I know the shape you mean, yeah.
Yeah, but the clever bit was Alfa Romeo stuck like a golf bag in the boot, and what it was a spoiler that clipped on the back. They built 200 cars, they did them all in silver, and you went down to your local Alfa Romeo dealer and said, can I have one of these, please? I think they even had a wooden steering wheel, a posh varnished one.
Yeah.
And not that you had them on the racing car. And so what's all this rubbish in the back? So I'll just put it in the corner of your garage. But what it did was it made into an aerofoil on the back, and it gave them the advantage.
Yeah.
And Janice and I were at Silverstone when Gabriele Tarquini won the championship for him.
Yeah.
And he came round Cops Corner on two wheels. I've never seen anything like it. And when I mean two wheels, I mean the inside wheels were in the air by about 2 foot. How he kept it from rolling, I do not know. And he just dropped it onto, and that was it.
Do you like the sort of like the team manufacturing stuff? They sort of obviously they work within limitations, don't they? But they've got to try and improve the cars. Or do you think it's more entertaining when they're all in the same car and like it's just about the driver?
Well, if I said it was, I like both, because the two CVs taught. I used to love watching those and Renault 5s racing. People say they're dead slow and boring, but they're not.
The racing was good there.
The racing's very close. Went to the last meeting at Rufford, and there was a Renault 5 race, one of the last races, and that was another one where it was a real cliffhanger. The lead swapped twice in the last straight.
Yeah.
Somebody managed to and right,
isn't it?
Yeah, and it was like a photo finish to finish.
Yeah.
A bit like the 1968 Monza Grand Prix, I think it was.
Yeah.
Where I think it was a wolf or an eagle that won with Dan Gurney, but there was all the big names spitting down his throat near enough. They were that close. And that's how it should be.
Yeah. Proper racing, isn't it?
Yeah, but nowadays with this, the Kerrs and all this lot, I do think it's better than it was.
Yeah, and ERS and things like that.
But you've lost the days of Gilles Villeneuve, where he just took a load of rubbish and got it to go around the track quicker than anybody else. That is skill.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe I think some of the rules are good, but like maybe there's just too many. Like.
Well, one of my all-time favourites or heroes was a guy called Tazio Nuvolari. You may have never heard of him.
No.
He was an Italian racing driver, and he used to drive for Alfa Romeo, and it was in the days just before the war. And he had this not very good old Alfa Romeo, best they had at the time. But Mercedes turned up with their, their W132s or 134s, I can't remember. The silver arrows.
Yeah.
But he managed to beat them.
Yeah.
And I think it was a Tunis Grand Prix. But you see, you can tell I know these things because I'm a bit of a geek that way.
Yeah.
I've read loads of motor racing articles and books, and I just like them. So anyway, it's not all about motor racing. You can't have fun all your life, can you?
No, that's it. Yeah. Do you think you built confidence through your career then? Like.
Yeah, I think you built confidence through adversity, to be honest. I think when you've given a challenge, you either don't step up to the mark, or you think, well, hang on a minute, we can make this, or we can do it differently. I'll give you an instance.
Yeah.
And it sounds really big-headed, but we had a company called Drum. They're now called, I think they're called Denver Drum, or Denver now.
Two names,
and basically what it is, they made a supercharged pump. In other words, it was for me it was interesting because it was like the old Bentleys where they had the supercharger on the front of the car.
Not sure, but yeah.
Yeah, if you look at a 1930s Bentley, some of them have a bit stuck out looks like a motorbike cylinder.
Like an add-on at the front.
Yeah, but that's a supercharger.
Yeah.
Billy's supercharger. And MG's had it as well, and a few others, Riley's and Wolseley's. And basically what it does is it's called a figure of eight, and it's two paddles that are shaped like a figure of eight from the side, and they mesh together. And as they mesh, they suck air in one way, and as they mesh, they make a good enough seal to push the air the other. And this spins at quite a high speed. Well, on a supercharger, it blew air in.
Yeah.
So the atmosphere, you were running artificial atmosphere.
Right. Okay.
That's why the Germans had the drop on us.
Yeah.
On the Second World War, because we had ordinary planes and radial engines that were working on the Merlin.
Yeah.
But
they had better engines.
But the Messerschmitts and Fokkers were supercharged because they'd had all this experience in motor racing.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You couldn't fly aeroplanes in Germany in 1935 onwards, or before that, because of what they said, about the arming. But they couldn't go motor racing, and that's where
they made their advances.
Yeah, Auto Union.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I've watched many articles and seen they don't link it together for obviously political reasons, but it can only be the real reason why these engines were so highly developed.
Yeah.
So they could be slotted in at some time, or they just let them play.
Engineering, though, isn't it? Engineering.
Oh yeah. I mean,
they were hotter on it, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, but when you consider you've got a car that'll do 200 mile an hour with drum brakes, frightening, eh?
A bit scary.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Fangio, he could drive it. There's no two ways.
You're talking about drum.
Oh yeah, drum. So a guy, I was lucky. This is where you're lucky. A young designer came in and he brought these designs in and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And then he said, "Well, what do you?" He was open, and he said, "What do you really think?" I said, "Well, I don't think it'll work." Oh, I said, "Well, that's fair enough." I said, "But I think there is a way we could make it work." Oh, right, we'll sit down. And we sat down for about an hour, maybe longer, and I just drew some bits, and he was the draftsman. There's no two ways about it.
You just said things, and he
I
sort
said,
of put it down.
If you could break this up into like an Airfix kit, I don't know if you remember Airfix.
Yeah, I used to have them, yeah.
I said, so what we would do is we'll make a front, because I saw it a bit like the washing machine that we'd made all them years ago.
Yeah.
And we made sides, a front, and a top for it.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, there was something else, and some little baffles on the inside to keep the walls.
Yeah.
And they were making these things in fiberglass, and they were costing a fortune.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you think? And he said, well, I'll go away and have a think. And a few days later he came back with it, and it was a full-blown drawing.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, that'll work. So he said, will you make us a prototype? And we made a prototype.
It's good that he came to you first, though, isn't it? Without and sort of.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the worst people are the people who know vac forming but don't.
Yeah, they've never done it, but they know it, yeah.
Or think they know what they're doing. I once got the best compliment in my life from one of my old partners, and that was, I'm a frustrated designer.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm a frustrated getting it right person.
Yeah.
Because your vac forming is not the same as making a metal box.
No.
You need it to have a taper and
Yeah,
rounded
draft angle
corners
and stuff.
and all that lot, you know.
Yeah.
So we made it, and every time I drive up the motorway, guess what I see?
You see.
One of those boxes.
Really?
Yeah, they're still in use. They've changed the colour. They were bright red, and looking at it, I can understand, because bright red's the colour of fire extinguishers. And if you see, usually I think it's Hover, the tanker company, they run them.
Yeah.
And they're basically a cover for the supercharger that runs off the engine, that blows out anything that's in that bulk tanker out. You know, it could be sawdust, it could be cement, it could be, I don't know, milk.
Yeah,
It basically pressurizes the tank to get it out.
Nice when you see stuff out and about, isn't it?
Oh yeah, well, it's like the jukeboxes. I love seeing the jukeboxes. We were in a pub not so long, and I thought, I've made some of that. I've been involved in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not me that's made everything. I haven't.
No.
You know.
But you've been involved in bits of the things.
Yeah.
That's it, isn't it? Well, that's working as a team, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's
Get more achieved,
that's why the name Team Vatform came about.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Because I wanted it to be like a little team. I mean, we'd had a great team at the other place.
Yeah.
But when I left there, I felt that was a line under my life. I nearly went on to do other things, but then decided, well, hang on a minute, why should I not do what I've always done? And I've
got the skills in it, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I got a few offers as well, so I was quite pleased. It was a bit flattery as well.
Why did you decide to do it on your own then? Did you just think, or go and set something new up? Did you just think, that's more me?
Well, it wasn't so much on my own. I'd known the guys at Sound Leisure for 30 odd years.
Yeah.
Some of them. I'd known Alan, I'd known Phil, I'd known Dave Boardman, and it was decided that Phil approached me. I was off work on gardening leave,
Yeah.
which I won't go into for this. And he said, look, what are you doing with yourself? What are you going to do after you've done your gardening leave? And I said, I don't know at the moment, and I really didn't. I said, I've got a couple of people who rung me, and I can't commit because we're still in that position.
Yeah.
So I purposely stayed low profile.
Yeah.
People might think I was out fishing, but I wasn't. I was actually staying low profile. In fact, funnily enough, I was gardening.
Yeah, literally.
I was helping people garden,
Yeah.
and I was doing my own garden, and then we had an allotment, which was, quite good. But what happened was then Phil rang me out of the blue, and I'd still got my car. I actually had a Vito van then as my runabout, and he just rang me and said, "Look, not bothered about what's going on that, in your past life. We don't want to get involved in that."
Yeah.
Because and it was very plain. He said, "We still use that company, and we will carry on to do that company.
Yeah.
But would you like to come and start a vac forming business
Yeah.
with us
Yeah.
as a partner?"
Yeah.
So it was decided we'd start a small partnership. We all put a bit of money in. And my view, one of the things I'd learned was I was very lucky I got a good solicitor.
Yeah.
Very good solicitor. And he just said, look, whatever happens when all this dust has settled, what are you going to do with your life? Will you start another company? So I said, I might do. And he said, well, I'll give you one little bit of advice. Remember, when you start one, you've got to be able to sell it.
Right.
And that's why I did what I did with Team Back Foam.
Right.
And the idea was that we'd get it up and running. In time, it would be sold back, and which is what we did.
Yeah, so that was your sort of aim straight from the start. Like you said, you wanted a vision.
Yeah.
And that was your vision.
Yeah. Well, Janice and I painted the factory out, the one at Cross Gates.
At Sandley.
Yeah. Janice came down and helped me paint it out, which, funnily enough, she did at the old company, because we had some new offices, and I was a bit short of staff, and I said, do you want to come down and give me a hand? And she never got paid for that.
Yeah.
She never got paid for this lot, but she still helped me.
Yeah.
You know, and...
it's quite handy then, with different bits and bobs.
Oh, Janice.
Yeah.
Oh, love of my life.
How long have you been with Janice for?
Well, it's 49. Is it 49 years or 50 years? We've known each other, but we've been married 48 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and
amazing.
Not really. She's a brilliant person. You know, it's
not hard when they're a great person.
Oh, don't get me wrong. We fight like cat and dog.
Yeah.
But you know, everybody does.
Yeah.
But we have the same interests. You know, if I said today, come on, it's a nice day, let's go to the south of France, we'd be packing camp in our walk caravan.
Yeah.
She's like that. She'll
the drop of a hat sort of thing.
Yeah, we like doing the same things. It's like the gardening now. She'll be gardening. We both like gardening.
Nice. It's good fun, isn't it?
It's
relaxing, isn't it?
You know, you think to yourself, have I missed out? But you haven't. You know, it's if you make that commitment and you believe in it, it's nice to go through it, and at the end of it, reflect and say, yeah, that was a fantastic opportunity. Yeah. People say, oh, what would you do if you won the lottery? I did that back in 1973.
Yeah.
I met Janice.
No.
You know.
That's really nice, Roger.
Yeah, well, it's the way it is. It's. I find myself lucky in that respect.
I think she's great. I've only known her for about an hour, but or two.
Well, since you last saw her when you were about 6 or 4.
I can't remember that. I was probably playing about.
You were on a little trike going round, so you're probably about 3 or 4. I can't remember.
Was that at Martin then, or was it after?
Yeah, it was at Martin. We went to come and see.
I remember doing that.
Yeah.
I remember doing that.
Yeah, and
yeah, relationships. You're lucky to have had that, aren't you? Because there's not that many people. Yeah. Especially nowadays, not many people manage to do that.
Well, I find myself lucky as well in life with, like now, speaking to you. Not in business, but just somebody I've known, I've seen grow up, and a bit like Nick.
Yeah.
Nick. You know, he's a good lad. Is Nick?
Yeah. He's a good lad. He's a nice lad.
Yeah, he is.
He's always friendly.
Yeah, he is. He's all right. I've got a lot of time. And to be honest with you, there's nobody else I could see that would be in that position who would be, how can I put it? In some respects, he's tough because you've got to roll with the punches. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And there's been plenty of fruit fairies, I'd say, that have thought they could do that kind of job and not been able to do it, you know, that I've met over the years. Yeah, yeah. So where were we now then? What are we doing now? Oh, foundry work, pattern work. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a belter.
Yeah. Go on then. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Well, in the old days when we used to have pattern makers, we used to have a guy called Eric Ingleby, and he was a case. He had a little place up near Gilderson, and his bungalow was just round the corner. And he was a right dry so-and-so, but a really nice fella, don't get me wrong. And
what do you mean by dry?
Well, he used to come out when you're younger, you know yourself, especially in the 70s and 80s. older guys were always on the wind up, or trying to pull you up, or try to,
ribbing you and stuff.
catch you out,
Yeah.
And I used to go up to see Eric, and I was by this time I was allowed to go up on my own, take a drawing, and get something made.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing quite a bit of this work. It was a great training. Bear in mind that Tony had been trained as a draftsman and a toolmaker, so he knew he was in a position, although he was a bookmaker, in a previous life, he'd been a toolmaker and draftsman.
I knew what he was doing then.
So, he was a smart cookie with Tony, no two ways about it.
Yeah.
Could read, and his mathematics, well, you didn't need a calculator, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And I used to go up to Eric's and I'd say, I'm desperate. Oh, I don't know. I might be able to do it for Monday. We'll say Monday.
Yeah.
So I'd make a note. I never kept a diary. It all went upstairs in the brain, because I believe if you lose your diary, you're stuffed. So if you try and remember everything, and you do, and I did, you've got it always with you. So Monday, I'm going up to Eric's. Phone call, ring him up. Right, Eric, I'm just going to set off. Well, we've had a few problems. It'll be Tuesday or maybe even Wednesday. So you're always on the put off.
Yeah. Okay.
And what it was, he was getting a lot of work from Waddington's, and they were doing all the packaging and stuff like that.
Right.
And they paid a lot more than we did. So we decided we'd look for another pattern maker to sort of run alongside. And we got one particular guy who was just round the corner from where we were, down Water Lane. This was just before we moved up to up to Cross Gates there. Not Cross Gates, Cross Green. And a guy called Brownridge, and he used to take a drawing in and he'd look at it and they all do that. All pattern makers, foundry workers go as soon as they do that. It depends on how many sucks you get. If it's 3, it's going to be bloody pricey. So anyway, he used to do that. And he said, oh, well, and then, are you sure, Paul, do you know everything you need to know? Yeah, no problem. So then I'd go down, walk round. It took me about 5-10 minutes to walk round the block and back. I'd just get in, go up the stairs, or go into the office, phone, telephone call for you. Who is it? It's Paul Brownridge. So I pick up the phone. Hello, Paul, how can I help you? Well, I've just found a bit of ambiguity. That was his favourite saying, ambiguity, in this drawing.
Like the word.
Yeah. Well, the big problem was a lot of draftsmen played games with the people who were making them.
Yeah.
They missed out little bits. Like on CAD, you can't do that. Because you look at a length, you put the two parameters in the A and B or whatever.
Gives you exactly
and
what
it gives you the exact measurement. But in those days, they'd miss bits out. So if you were good, you wrote it down on a pad and added it all up. If you were crap, you had a calculator. And you'd find out a measurement that way. But there were bits missing, or they'd be done in silly fractions just for awkwardness, imperial fractions as well.
Yeah.
So I'd go around and sort it. Well, it got to every time you did a job, it were like that. So I ended up bringing a bike from home and leaving it at work, so I could shoot round on this push bike. Because by the time you got your car out to go around, you might as well have walked. So I had this push bike.
Quickly get around there.
To get around. And nearly every time you did a job, might not be straight away, but within a few hours, I found a bit of ambiguity in drawing.
Yeah.
And it was like he were trying to find problems. Because he wouldn't do any remedial work if you needed a modification. Some pattern makers that charge for it, some wouldn't.
Some would just fix it for you.
And then we started using a company called Dawson's, which ended up getting bought by Sound Leisure, and they were really good.
Yeah.
The guy who I worked alongside him in the big place at where Team Backform is. They were next door, and I got to know David. I knew him for many years as a pattern maker, but his hobby is like mine, Formula 1. So we'd spend all our dinner times discussing
Chatting about it.
Formula One years gone by. Stuart, who used to be the other pattern maker, he were bored witless.
You're good at remembering the names of all these people.
I always used to make a point of trying to remember everybody's name.
Yeah.
And the other thing I used to always try and do was remember the conversation, because somebody might be a keen football fan.
Yeah.
And if you go and they say from Sheffield, and you say, how are they going this year?
How's the Wednesday
How's
doing?
the Blades going, or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Builds that relationship.
Yeah, it builds a relationship.
Do you think relationships are like one of the most important parts of business?
Well, my personal hate in the modern world are texts.
Yeah, I know you don't. I can tell that.
Emails. Yeah.
He said this morning, he texted me, didn't you? And he said, what time?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And I said what time it was, and he went, okay.
Because I believe that
I know what you mean, though.
one phone call will save a million texts in time.
Yeah.
You know, if you're sat down looking at a motorbike, the only advantage now is you could take a picture and you and I could have a WhatsApp conversation or whatever while you're there with your camera.
Yeah.
But
you
could say, what do you think if we did this or did that? You can discuss it. Whereas if you're texting or emailing, you don't.
It's long-winded, isn't it?
Oh, that's
even if you're good at it.
If you're a fast typer, yeah.
But it's still better to just have a quick conversation. The only problem with it I see is that you can't quite remember what you said, and you've got no record.
Oh,
of it.
well, yeah, it's become the new secretary as the email.
Yeah.
You know, what did they say to us last year? So and so. Well, we haven't kept that letter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know,
that's the nice thing about it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
the final text should be the one that you do. You know, the final bit you should maybe send by text. But otherwise, I don't see the point.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the amount of times you can say, well, if you just move that whole so-and-so, oh, yeah, you're right, we'll do it. And jobs are good.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, it's hard until you're doing it on that particular one. And I never really took to it. I didn't have a mobile phone for many years until I started seeing back form.
Yeah.
And then it was the only way I could get going because I was a one-man band.
Yeah.
And the phone used to ring, and I'd go outside. There'd be a compressor banging away, and maybe on the machine I'd pull sheets out that we're doing. Answer the phone and go and stand outside because it was quieter. And people used to say, "Where are you? Sounds like a damn zoo." And it were birds tweeting in trees if it was spring, you know.
Sounds
like you're out in a garden.
What was the best and worst thing about starting it up again and doing your own thing? Like, what was the nice thing? What was the bad thing about it? How do you?
The worst thing was, like any business, is the slog. You know,
getting something going.
Yeah, and I hadn't done it in anger on the machines for quite a while. I hadn't done the forming. I'd not got I'd left all my books that I could relate to about shrinkage and one thing and another. So I had to have a bit of a scrabble around the trade.
Yeah, rethink on it.
And some people, you know, it's the old story, don't make enemies, make friends. And I got some great help from a guy that I actually sacked, but started his own business.
From the previous place?
From the previous place, well, from Bolton May. And he was incredibly helpful. He sent me up shrinkage charts and stuff like that. I managed to get some bits from the manufacturers of the machine, but all in German for you know, the wiring diagrams and stuff like that. Yeah. And like everything, as I say, I met a new company that we dealt with. I knew somebody that used to be keen on. Well, I used to go watching motor racing with him. I got invited by him because he worked with the Roylite, the plastics company. Yeah. And Jonathan and I became quite good friends at one stage, and he'd started a business selling second-hand machinery. So I got to know Jonathan better than I did do, and he put me onto his brother-in-law, who did the maintenance. And
so maybe the change of it was any change is good, isn't it? At the same time as being bad. It's
well, you know, going back to motor racing, it's like it's one of those things. His father owned a big vat forming company and in Manchester. And we went to see motor racing at, he said, come on. Well, he was racing a Clio. And he said, do you fancy coming down and watching me? So I said, yeah, I'll come down. And we went, Janice and I went. So we've got some grandstand seats if you want to come. And he didn't do very well, sadly. I always give him some stick about it. But we went down to Donington and I was sat next to his father. So we're chatting about business and moulding and stuff like that. But we had the common thread that was motor racing.
Yeah.
And as it happened, his father liked Can-Am or Formula 5000 cars.
Yeah.
And so do I.
Yeah.
And now there was a Formula 5000 race and there was Chevrons and Lolas and all that lot in it. Yeah. And I said, oh, that's a nice Lola. And he said, you know your stuff, don't you? I said, well, yeah. I said, the star attraction is the P8 McLaren when it comes out, which is the little orange thing with the 8-litre engine and sounds like an artillery barrage. Believe me, if you're close to them, you know it.
I'd like to go to some more stuff like that because I do like cars.
Well, those cars are the full fat cars of those. The sound is fantastic, and they are they're basically not designed to be raced because they're an aeroplane turned upside down wanting to take off. Not like they've got wings on them like you have with Formula One. Yeah. So and they go like stink. They really do.
Is that like a suction on the bottom then, or something?
No, they were ground effect, but it was a car that sadly Bruce McLaren got killed in testing. Yeah. That type of car. But they were really quick.
Pushing the limits.
Yeah, it's a bit like, I don't know if you've seen that film, Ford versus Ferrari.
No, I don't think so. No.
Worth catching. It's quite good. Yeah. It's about the GT40. Yeah. Racing Ferrari and now Ferrari.
I know the one you mean, I think. I've been told to watch that by someone else.
It's good. It's a good film, yeah. So, just going back to the pattern shop, when you've gone to the pattern shop and you've got your pattern made, and there's really two ways of making patterns simply, and that's you make a male and a female that go together, and the middle bit is, the outside your sand car, and the other one's your car that goes inside it. Yeah. So you press one into the sand, then you press one into the other, and you make them together and pour the aluminium in.
And you come out of a solid shape, which is your pattern.
Yeah, and then the other one's a model pattern, which does it all. It's basically a bit like, imagine you're doing that teacup with no handles. Yeah. You push the outside into the sand, and then put the other, and it's a lot cheaper. Right. And we used to sort of try and err towards that, because you were saving half the pattern costs.
Right, okay, yeah.
And
keep it cheaper.
Yeah. And the other thing is,
I suppose we're prototyping though, because you said you did a lot of prototyping stuff. You had to, didn't you? Because
you did.
It's a key thing, isn't it?
Going back to prototyping, usually, as I say, because it was R&D and people weren't spending millions on CNCs and one thing and another, they didn't really look at the bill as long as they got what they wanted.
Right, okay.
Depends
who you're dealing with, I suppose.
But one particular instance, I went down to the foundry, and these foundries, I don't know if you've ever been to
No, I've never been to one of those.
Iron foundry. Well, none of them have any windows in. No, because it's so hot. And in winter, they put boards up against the window because they don't need the light. And in summer, they smash all the windows. Yeah. I mean, I used to go to one regular, and the whole wall was just broken glass. And the guys, if it were too hot, would just smash a window. They couldn't open the windows because they'd rusted up or whatever. They're usually quite bleak places. Yeah. Anyway, one particular day, it was a very frosty morning, and I'd been out I went to the foundry, and normally I timed it so they were just finishing the break. They had like a sandwich break. They'd go in early, get the furnaces going. Yeah. And then there'd be in the little shed in the middle. It was like a shed. And it was quite a substantial building with this shed, luckily in this case. Not that it hit it. But they were all out, and they were all out in the yard and looking all over. And they had probably about 8 or 10 of them. The two gaffers, a guy called Raymond and, can't think of it, Derek. And Derek were a real teeth-sucking specialist, And I said, what's up? He said, we've got a bit of a problem. And he said, come and have a look at furnace. This was Raymond who took me in. and it had blown the door clean off the top of the furnace. They're like about the size of, one of these telephone things, where they have a big wire that goes round a cable drum.
Right,
one of the really big ones.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about that diameter, about a 10 foot, 15 foot diameter.
Big bit
Stands
of kit.
about, quite, but it's all insulated. It's not a big area inside.
Yeah.
And this door was quite a heavy thing, and it had blown it clean off. And it had flown in the air at the door, and the door must have weighed probably, I don't know, 200 kilos,
Jesus.
maybe 150 kilos, and it was laid on the side in the sand.
Yeah.
And they'd just gone in for the snap.
Yeah.
And what had happened is they bought some aluminium that was contaminated with water. Somehow it got water inside it.
Yeah, yeah.
And when it had
pressurised.
expanded, and it blew this ingot clean out, and it went straight out through the roof, through next to a skylight. It took the skylight and a bit of roof out. And
did you turn up as this had happened then?
No, it had already happened.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were all just out in the yard looking.
Jesus.
And they were up and down this, it was at the side of the canal, and they were looking up and down the canal. And Raymond said, well, if we don't find it now, there'll be somebody dead or it's gone in the canal. And they never found it.
Yeah.
But it had gone straight out the building, and the building was 30-foot ceiling.
Jesus.
And it had cleared that straight out. It wasn't in any of the yards round by. Luckily, most of the buildings
Gone to
round
space.
it were derelict.
Yeah.
It was a derelict area.
Didn't hit anyone.
Whoa, bloody hell, I mean, it was hilarious when I look back. But at the time, it wasn't very funny.
No, it must have been pretty stressful.
They were all panicking a bit, as if to say, bloody hell. I mean, there were always accidents. People got burnt and stuff like that. But this would have been, if they'd have been close, it'd have been nasty.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
yeah, it would have killed
so
someone.
all that was, that next thing I went down a few days later, and all ingots had been smashed up into little bits, ready to go in furnace.
Yeah, yeah.
So they weren't taking a chance on any ingots.
It's a different world, isn't it?
Oh, it was. It was a.
I don't know much about it really. It's not something. I know we had to have something cast recently, but I just said, yeah, go ahead, and they got it sorted. Meadows,
Yeah.
But that was just because it was quite a tall product. It was a hugger, formed in plastic, so it's quite a tall thing. And they said if that's resin, it'll crack. So yeah, he said because it's not going to get warm in the middle because it's really big. You're probably better off making it out of sort of a bit of a sort of, I don't know. I can't remember how thick it is now. I've never actually seen it in person at all.
All right.
He said you had to make it in this sort of aluminium that was cast.
Yeah. Well, nowadays you can just put the cast the casting. Put the casting on a CNC and machine it.
Yeah.
In the day when I would do it, we had to file it.
Yeah, exactly.
Machine it and file it, and the trouble was
messing about.
Yeah, it wasn't as easy. It was all right if you were doing, I don't know, jag gearboxes. You could set a machine up to machine them, but if you were just doing one-offs, it was all hand work with a sander and grinder and doing.
Trying to get into corners and stuff.
Yeah, I quite liked it, but it was a long, laborious process. But it suited me because if the phone rang, I could drop. If I was out on a machine or doing something else, I couldn't leave it as quick.
Yeah.
So I used to end up doing a lot of the fettling. In fact,
yeah.
It's down the garden. There's an old water tank that we made for somebody that was getting thrown out, and I fettled that when it was originally made. We use it as a planter now.
Is it a vac form piece, is it?
It was the tool for a vac forming,
Yeah.
And it was just getting thrown out.
Working it by hand. Working on stuff by hands, we're rewarding though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, very much so. But you see, the other side of it was, when I first started, you actually had a system, Hermitite had a system, and you basically put a gel coat into a moulding. You get your print off your pattern as a vac forming. You'd wax it, then you'd put the gel coat in.
Right.
Then you'd put a binder coat, which was the gel coat was green.
Yeah.
The binder coat was blue.
Yeah, so
and
you can see
you'd
the
let
difference.
that gel coat get sticky. Then you'd paint. This were both by paintbrush. You'd paint in a binder coat.
Yeah.
And then what you did was, do you remember milk bottle tops? The old ones that were like tin foil but a bit thicker.
Right, not really, but yeah, go on.
Well, they were basically, cooking foil, but imagine it being about 4 times thicker.
Yeah.
Still very thin.
Yeah.
They were like shredded.
Yeah.
just tiny bits of this.
Onto the gel.
No, what you do is you put it into a bucket, you poured in the resin. You must make sure that your resin wasn't too far, you didn't put too much hardener in because you get an exotherm.
Yeah.
And
get too hot.
Yeah, you'd put, you'd
go off too quick.
Mix it all up. And it was like just putting into a pudding basin, and you'd fill the gap, and it was strong enough to hold the tool from collapsing.
Right, it would support the tool.
Yeah, once it had gone off, the aluminium gave, and the clever thing, it was a German invention. The clever thing was the aluminium would give you porous airways, so you just had to drill very short. The hardest thing is when you've got a deep section of material and you've got to try and vent through. You don't want vent holes any more than 1 mil.
Yeah, I know, because otherwise they show up on the job, don't they?
Yeah.
It looks pretty horrible, doesn't it?
That's it, yeah. So
back drilling as well, stuff like that, it's hard work, isn't it? I've heard stuff like that when you've got to retro act, you've got to retro fix something. You go, I've got to back drill it with something big and then get right to the surface and then finish it off. Yeah. It's a ball ache, isn't it?
There's a clever way of doing that. Yeah.
Go on then.
2 pencils.
2 pencils?
Well, a pencil basically.
Yeah.
And what you do is I used to stand it on a pencil, drill it with a pencil hole, stand the whole thing on some bits of wood, and then mark out the distance to the edge. Draw around the shape, lift it up, put the pencil in, and get it as close as you could to those lines.
To show you where the hole was.
So you can then drill it, measure it, and that's where your hole was. And then you took an educated guess and hit it.
And you usually find it.
Yeah, quite easy. Once
especially if you use, like you say, a 1 mil drill hole on the top.
Well, those 1 mil drills, if you know what you're doing, you can bend them a lot.
Yeah.
But you break a lot learning.
One. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I broke a lot.
I used to break so many when I was doing the tools. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you do. And in fact, at one stage, Raymond used to say, "Will you drill this because you're better at it than me?" That was one of the only things I think I were any better than Raymond Johnson. But then
it's a knack to it, isn't it?
Yeah, we did a job and we had to drill it very finely, and he managed to do it with 1/4 mil drills.
Wow.
But he did everything back drilled.
You can barely see him.
Yeah, you can hardly see him. But he mastered that.
Yeah.
I've got to take my hat off to him. He had the patience to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the tooling. It's like you said about your man cracking. Those older ways are now, especially in resin, because the beauty about a resin tool is, if you're only using a small run, it's a good cheap way of making a tool.
Yeah.
If you use aluminium, the first thing you've got is you've got to get it hot.
Yeah.
3 or 4 formings into it. The next problem you've got is keeping it cool.
Yeah.
Unless you put a lot of effort in and put pipes in it and one thing and another to keep it cool. So you're forever moulding it, cooling it, moulding it, cooling it.
Yeah.
I
think it's because of the amount we were going to make, and he said if you're making that many, it'll probably split. So we changed to this aluminium sort of thickness of the shape. I don't know how they did it. He just said, this is the way I think you should do it. And I just said, go ahead. Because I'm not, I know a bit about all that stuff, but not a massive amount. I know a very limited little area of the tooling stuff, really.
Well, it's something you should really swat up on because it's so handy. Because you then can make the judgment for, well, do I really need to make it in this aluminium at X amount of money, or could I do it in resin?
Most stuff is resin. I mean, like pretty much 99% of it's resin.
Well, we learnt many years ago that it was better for our type of production. I'm talking about both companies. Short run production was a lot better in resin.
The red stuff that you used,
Well, that came on later, but everything used to be epoxy resin, which could be a bit of a nightmare to pull.
Yeah.
Sorry, to pour, because if it exothermed, you really knew about it.
Yeah. Is that the grey stuff then?
Yeah, the grey
stuff. The Alchemy, that company made it.
Well, there's many made them over the years, but Alchemy will.
Isn't it like a resin with an aluminium in it or something?
Yes, that's it. Basically,
a bit of a powdered aluminium.
Powdered aluminium, yeah. You used to be able to buy the powder separate as well.
Yeah, to add it yourself.
Yeah, if you wanted it to be a bit more aluminium-y. we were saying a little bit earlier about people, or while we were having lunch, about people who sort of tell you what they want and are prepared to change, and then people who don't.
Yeah.
And there was one guy, we made we did a big job for, I don't know if you know the name Budge. They used to own all the coal mines. They bought the coal mines
Right.
after
Thatcher.
After Thatcher's era.
Yeah.
But there was a company before that called MBS Retford, and they started using slate, shale, and coal, slag heaps,
Right, yeah.
mixing it with epoxy resin,
Yeah.
and making roof tiles.
Yeah.
So, because a lot of these modern roof slates are not slate, they're a composite. They
Yeah.
look like slate.
They look like it, yeah.
Yeah. The biggest problem they had was getting it matte, because all the epoxies in the early ones were shiny.
Shiny looking, yeah.
And this guy came in, and he was a designer, and we'd done a few jobs for him over the time, and he came in with them, and he said, right, this is your tooling. And all it was a slate that had been put on a piece of wood and filled round, and said, I want you to make an aluminium tool for these people. So we did. And then the first order came in, and he didn't tell us. We didn't know it was going to be done in epoxy. He just said, "Oh, we're just going to make these trays for these slates."
Yeah, no more than that.
And there were slate finish, and we didn't really put two and two together.
Yeah.
Anyway, we made a batch of them of about quite a few, maybe 200 or 300. And the bloke came from MBS and said, he came with him, and he says, "We can't get them out. What have you done to the material?"
Yeah.
"We haven't done anything." "Did you wax them?" "Yeah, we used a spray." "Have they exothermed?" And you could see bloke who were designer think, hang on a minute, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
And basically, they ended up with resin covered pieces of plastic covered pieces of resin. They got them off, but they destroyed them.
Yeah.
Well, each one of these was quite, they weren't pounds, but there were a few, 50p. So it added a big price to the
Overall job.
overall. So we turned around and said, "Well, why don't you do them in polypropylene?"
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, do you do polypropylene?" And by this time, we'd become quite good at polyethylenes, LDPEs, polypropylene, polycarbonates, you name it.
Yeah.
We'd learned all these things.
Got the experience, yeah.
And we did them all in polypropylene.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
Yeah.
They never wore out. No, they did wear out, but they lasted a long time, a lot longer than they thought. In fact, the guy from MBS came and he said, "Bloody hell, that one of the best bits of advice we've ever had, because they've lasted really well."
Yeah.
But then they bought a machine. They made a stainless steel tool and did them all with stainless steel, which is like injection moulding. It was the way to go.
Yeah, injection moulding's an interesting one, isn't it? It's quite. We always we've done little bits of injection moulding here and there, but it's just like it's all the volume, isn't it? The volume.
Well, that's it. If you're making pipe brackets or something, injection moulding's the way.
Yeah, it's got to be, isn't it?
But if you're making, just a few.
One thing for a bike.
Yeah, well, we used to make all, as I said, like with Phillips, a lot of that stuff was turned into injection moulding in the time. And the amount of people who came through the door and we did the initial run, got it going, it was a bit like rapid prototyping.
Yeah.
They'd get a batch going, and then as soon as they got a bit of money, they'd invest it in their company.
Yeah.
And get some injection moulding tools.
We do a lot of stuff now that's like 3D printed to the end user. So like we've got certain, like I do these little headlight covers for small headlights.
Yeah.
And they're only sort of the size of your palm.
Yeah.
But they cost nothing as a 3D print.
Yeah, well, that's it. 3D printing is the future, in my opinion. It always has been.
Yeah.
Because I think when one day in the future, you'll have it in your house.
Yeah. Everyone will, yeah.
You'll just pay 20 quid or whatever, you can download a set of cutlery or something, I don't know.
Yeah. No, you hear people talking about it. I heard a Japanese guy talking about that recently, yeah.
Well, they do. There's a lot of stuff made. I used to have a TVR. I had a 350 TVR, and one of the problems with it was the front side lights and the indicators.
Yeah.
They had a metal backing.
Right.
And the first time, there was a company in Sheffield who specialised in specialist bits for TVRs, and they always used to rot through.
Where are they? They British?
I can't remember. It's a few years. I mean, it's 20 years since that TVR job sort of thing.
Yeah, I can't remember where they're from.
But anyway, I got it through the club. I was a member of the TVR club, and somebody said, try these people. So I rang them up and said, oh yeah, we can do you. And I can't remember if I called in or... because I used to obviously go past Sheffield a lot, going down to Chesterfield. Anyway, I got these bits and then made the backs in resin.
Really?
They cast a little resin.
Yeah.
It was really cheap rubbish stuff, but it was good because it was waterproof.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was good enough. And they've been quite clever. They put some little inserts in, so you could just screw it up as original fitting.
It's cool, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
cool when you see stuff like that where you sort of go, oh yeah, that's a part of the marketplace where that's happening. Like with this 3D printing stuff that we're doing. I remember going to a show once and I was speaking to a bloke on a stand of these bikes. They're called Zero, it's electric bikes.
Yeah.
And I was chatting to him about 3D printing. I was saying, oh yeah, we do a few bits that we sell to the customer that are 3D printed. He said, oh yeah, they do it on the bikes. Open the seat up and in the bottom all the battery tray and
It's
stuff.
3D
It's all 3D printed.
Yeah, we made them before.
Yeah.
We used to make polypropylene battery trays for electric scooters.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what we call fat tractors.
Yeah.
You know the mobility scooters.
Yeah.
A guy in
Fat
Huddersfield.
tractors, yeah.
Well, that's what it's only because David the pattern maker called them that.
Yeah, go
But
on, yeah.
a guy in Huddersfield, he was the first person I knew that ever made them.
Yeah.
And he was a lecturer. He was an engineering lecturer at Huddersfield Polytechnic, and he came up with the idea of these two motors, twin batteries, and like a tank system, which helped them turn better, and a diff. It worked as a diff, and basically, as it steered, it switched one of the motors off.
Yeah.
And they had this, so they could go around corners a bit sharp.
Yeah, let you go around the corner, like tight
And
circle.
The bodies were made in Manchester at a place called Manplas, from memory, because we knew Manplas. But they did a lot bigger stuff than we did. But because we knew them in the trade, we talked to each other, and we bought material from them. They bought material from us. It was
Knew of each other.
yeah. It wasn't. I won't say it was. What's the word when you say? We didn't sort of swap customer information, but we knew what each other were doing.
Yeah.
Knew
of each other.
We weren't cartelling, shall we put it that way?
Yeah.
But you get to know a lot of people in the trade as well. We've been in it as long,
Yeah.
People over in Hull and down in Rutland. There's a Line Cross. I knew a couple of people who worked at Line Cross.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think about? Obviously, there's a past, the present, and the future. Which one of those do you think about the most?
Oh, I think anybody who's used to. I'm definitely for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I love, as you've heard, I love the old-fashioned racing cars.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of these electric cars. I mean, that little Golf goes like a scalded cat when you put your foot down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the electric, while the engine's just thinking about ticking over and revving up.
What is it? 2015 GTE, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Golf GTE.
Yeah.
So what's that? Has it got electric? It's got an electric motor that assists the engine.
Yeah, it's got I think it's a 100 horsepower motor.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Bosch motor apparently.
Yeah.
One of the garage I have it serviced up here at the garage, local village garage. You'd laugh, you'd never find it.
Yeah.
But in there, any one day,
Hidden.
you can have a couple of Rolls Royces, odd Ferrari, a couple of Forts and tractors.
So it's word of mouth then.
Yeah, he's a local garage. I mean, first time I went in, he's welding a tractor chassis together, and next to it is a vintage Bentley.
Wow. Okay.
And he's got, I think he's got a Wolseley Hornet, an original 1920s, lovely thing.
Yeah. Not heard of that before. Well,
Yeah, it's the old.
100 years ago.
well, it might be a 1930. It's somewhere around that age. It's a racing car, you know. Well, they were a tourer, but they took the mudguards off and raced them.
Yeah.
And then he's got he's got an Oakland, which is an American car that he's been working on. He's got a Nuffield tractor this is in his garage at home.
Yeah.
And he's got a single-seater racing car now that he wants to do sprints with.
Yeah.
And Mark's
fully into it then, isn't he?
Oh yeah, moving here, it's like coming to Classic Cars Anonymous.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of classics around here you won't believe.
Yeah.
You know, Rolls Royces, maybe obscure stuff. There's a guy down there, he's got a Cooper S, an original one.
Yeah.
You know, there's another couple that come, I don't know if they've got rid of it, but they had a VW Rat camper.
Yeah.
You know, with rusty body and all that lot.
Yeah.
And then there'll be somebody else, you know. There's a couple of rare Lanciers in there at the moment, you know.
Deltas and stuff like that.
No, before that. Monte Carlo and I can't think what the
Stratos, maybe?
Oh, Stratos.
They're cool, aren't they?
I've seen that in action.
Really? I'd like to see one of those. Never seen one.
Have you not?
Not even just sat there, I don't think. What's the...
Don't set me off about rallying again.
What's your... well, okay. So you say you think about you do think about the future, though?
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
No, set me off about rallying. Ask me about Lancia Stratos.
I wanted to ask you what your favourite car was that you've ever...
Well, it isn't. I don't have any favourites, really.
No? You like them all?
Oh, well, I do, actually. They call it a T32 T5 camper named Dora.
Yeah.
And I've had her 13 years.
Yeah.
She's absolutely the best vehicle I've ever had.
Yeah.
Because there's a Swiss Army knife and she's parked in the garage.
Yeah, can do everything.
Yeah, we've been all over in her. And she's just such a useful piece of kit.
Yeah.
And she's held the money as well.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yeah, they do. So
yeah, I think John Cattell's got a...
Yeah, he's got a T. He's got a T. I think his is a. I think it's a bit newer. I think quite a bit newer. I think it's either a 14 or 17 plate. I seem to remember it was blue. He told me it's a long wheelbase T6.
Yeah.
And I think Lynn's got one as well now.
Yeah.
Oh, she has got one. He told me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
been inside one of them. I can't remember which one it was now. Nice thing though.
Lancia Stratos.
Cool
Many
car,
years
yeah.
ago, the RAC rally used to run at Oliver's Mount at Scarborough. Don't know if you've ever been to Scarborough.
Yeah, been a couple of times, yeah.
Well, you know the castles at one side?
Yeah.
Well, if you turned round and looked across, there's a hill at the other side called Oliver's Mount.
Yeah.
It's a motorbike circuit.
Yeah.
And
I think I've heard of that, yeah.
They run motorbike races on it. But it's called Oliver's Mount because he put his guns on there to blow up the castle when they were fighting the War of the,
War of the Roses?
No, not the War of the Roses. The Civil War.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, this particular time, we because I didn't have a lot of time, I used to have to go and watch what they call Mickey Mouse stages. So it was either Saturdays or Sundays. Well, this particular RAC rally, it was running Oliver's Mount, which I went to a few times. But it was the era of the Lancia Stratos. And they're really awesome because they're a V6 Ferrari engine in the back.
Yeah,
it's basically
crazy,
a Dino Ferrari engine in a space frame, and they go like...
Well, but they're pretty crazy to drive, aren't they?
Well, I don't know, I've never driven one, but...
I've heard that they're like a handful, though.
Well, they were basically a tarmac car.
Yeah.
Anyway, the car itself was in Italia colours.
Yeah.
And Sandro Manari was the driver. He was a fantastic tarmac rally driver. And anyway, we were all up at Oliver's Mount on the top. There's a hairpin bend.
Yeah.
And then there's a straight that goes to the monument.
Yeah.
And that's where you look out over the sea. And then it comes back on a back straight. And what it was, they were setting them off at the bottom, come along the bottom bit, which is bumpy and twisty, round a hairpin bend, up this hill. And it's quite a steep hill. And this thing just launches itself up the hill.
Yeah.
There's only one thing I've ever seen go quicker, and that's a four-wheel drive. Because it had the grip.
Yeah.
Audis and that.
Yeah.
And this Lancia came round the corner, and it had been raining, it had been a bit drizzly, it was a bit sea fretty. Typical rally day, brilliant. You like it like that. A bit of bad conditions. And he came round first time, and they were doing 1 3/4 trips round the lap. So we actually saw him twice, or we were going to see him twice. So he came round, did his first lap, and then he came round again, and he was supposed to come off 3/4 of the way down. And he came down the back straight, and he was trotting. He really was. Anyway, there was this big ooh. I mean, you've got to understand, there's the noise of the car, but the crowd was more noisy than the car. There were that many people there. It's hard to believe how many people actually used to go to rallies.
Right by the road.
Right by the road. And he'd missed a turning, hadn't he?
Really?
So he came back round and he was a man possessed. He really was. He was about twice as quick up that hill as he was first twice. And he came round and he just literally, his foot must have just slid straight off the clutch when he put it into whatever gear he was in, and he just floored it. And I'll never forget it. The road was like Back to the Future. You know, when the car goes through,
leaves a burn mark.
There's like steam coming off the road, and he turned this wet surface into steam. And literally it was, and everybody went, bloody hell. And everybody rushed across the track because we were on one side to see him. Oh, you couldn't get across the field quick enough, but you could see him go down the field, and the vortices coming from the back of the car, you know, with the damp conditions. And everyone, whoa! And he went back, and he didn't lose that much time, and he was pulling it all the way back. And then about I think it was the second to last stage, he crashed out in Dalby Forest. Wow. He was okay. The car was written off, but he was okay in his co-driver.
Giving it some, trying to make that time back
just
up.
trying to make that time and win. But it was impressive. It was one of those things you'd never forget.
And that was in a Stratos,
yeah.
Amazingly styled as well.
Oh, fabulous. Well, you know about Melvin and Stratos, don't you?
No.
Oh, God.
Does he like it?
No. Well, he didn't really, did it? Have you been to Melvin's?
No, I'm trying to get him on. I spoke to him about it when I first started.
He has 2 cars in there. In his shed in his garage. And I went to see him once. I don't know why, we'd been to Pyramid, and he said, you'll have to come have a look. And so I said, all right, I'll come down. And I went down, and he's got a chopped off car, and then a saloon car, you know, a coupe, not a coupe, a coupe. And I said, what are these based on? He said, well, originally there was a kit, a Lancia Stratos kit. So I started laughing. And then I said, what's this running gear? He said, well, it's Citroen. It's Citroen suspension. He put Citroen, whatever.
Well, like hydraulic stuff.
Hydraulic suspension on a chassis. And he was building this in fiberglass, you know, in filler. And it was about a foot deep with this filler sandings. How he's still alive, I don't know. And the whole place was just covered in filler.
He won't mind you talking about that. You know, he's known for it, isn't he?
So I said, and what's the engine? He said, well, I'm using a 1200 Vauxhall engine. Well, at that time, I just burst into laughter. Because you've got this wonderful looking thing. And the engine's a blinking Ford Vauxhall Corsa, I think it was, engine in it.
Not the nicest, most desirable, is it?
Well, it wasn't even a twin cam. It was a thingy, wasn't it? It was a valve jobby. So
he's a good lad, though.
Oh, he's all right.
I'd like to go and speak to him.
Yeah.
I need to get back in contact with him, really.
Yeah.
He's an interesting bloke. Because he didn't start in that at all, did he? Because he did completely
No, he was
stuff.
he used to work in printing, I think.
Yeah.
And graphic design. He told me he worked in Soho.
Yeah.
So I think he...
Lovely shapes, though. Some of the shapes he come up with.
Oh, yeah, well, he showed me his drawings, which were used to be a big feature in... it was in Meccano magazine when I was a lad. That there were... And Custom Car... You used to have like a drawing competition, and I think the BBC ran it for quite a while. And it was like Young Designer of the Year for cars. And there were, you still see some drawings shown.
So he'd always been into it, even when he was younger then, really?
Oh yeah, I think he started I had a go at drawing them. I bought a book when I was a kid to learn how to draw cars.
Tricky, innit?
Very hard. Well, especially to get the 3D, you know, get the
perspective.
The third dimension of them.
I used to draw cars all the time. Used to love it. I'm always looking. You were saying earlier, like Janice was saying, oh yeah, you're always looking at like things in shops and like how things are made and that. I'm always looking at shapes on cars.
Yeah.
It's interesting me because it's not a skill I've really nailed yet. It's like styling.
You can't.
And cars are the perfect object, aren't they? Because they're just completely freeform in so many ways, aren't they?
Well, it's like doing, as I said about doing bits and bobs. Not only have we done motorbike bits, we've made. I've made windows for racing cars.
Yeah.
Some friends were running an MGB.
Plastic windows for them.
Yeah, plastic windows.
Yeah.
Made them for the 2CV mob.
Yeah.
These were on the side, by the way. These weren't, through the business. So we just one-offs out of scrap material and stuff. And I bought some actually from somebody who got a few sheets they wanted to get rid of. Another company I know. We made the headlights for the headlight holders for these big 6-wheeled diggers. They've got a bend in the middle, like a tractor at front with 2 wheels, and then 4 wheels behind, and they have a big.
Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Like you see a lot of made of that are Volvo, but these were for Euclid.
Yeah.
Or
have a big tipper on the back, sort of thing. Yeah.
And we made the headlight units for those.
Yeah.
And we made some for a company that converted standard headlights into round ones. There used to be a bit of a fashion for rounded headlights. Well, these were rounded headlights. And all sorts of jobs like that come across.
You're always interested in how things worked from an early age then, when you were really young?
Oh, Meccano was my teacher.
How things go together.
Oh, yeah. Took me 6 months to build a differential for a truck that I decided. I'd read in the Meccano magazine, and he gave you the drawings. That was a good thing. You had the drawings there, and you had to try and work out how you could build it.
Put it together, yeah.
Yeah, because I wasn't marvellously good at reading the text, but I could see how it all worked.
If the images were good, you were...
Yeah, and you built this gearbox, you built this differential, but the trouble was it was that big, and the wheels I'd got, there was about 2 mil clearance between the carpet and when it stood on the carpet, and it wouldn't go because the wheels were they weren't rubber, they were plastic.
Yeah.
So I had to source some bigger wheels for this. But what I did do was I built that. But what took me the time was building the second one and getting them to work together. So instead of having a 2-wheel drive, I'd got a 6-wheel drive truck.
Yeah.
Because my dad was a truck driver by then, and I was keen on building these Meccano trucks.
Yeah.
Cranes and tipper lorries and conveyor lorries. I once made a conveyor lorry that I made a belt out of an old, I think it was an old inner tube that managed to stick together. And it was when the coal board used to deliver. You see them now, the potato lorries.
Right.
And they have like a conveyor belt at the bottom.
Yeah.
The load goes in, and then when they want to empty the load, they just open it, the back door, and it pushes them out through the back.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah. How big were the Meccano things you were working on?
Probably the biggest one, which was an 8-wheel truck, was about 2 foot long, 2.5 foot long.
Yeah. How
But
old were you when you were doing that, do you think?
I did it up till I probably finished about 15.
Yeah.
So I did it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But I used to, on a rainy day, and being an only child, you have to make your own company. So I'd go upstairs and I'd just spend hours doing something, making ideas. A lot of stuff I made myself, I'd just come up with, well, I'll tell you what, I think I'll make a low loader.
Yeah.
And I'd have an idea of what I wanted to do.
Do you think you were quite introverted at that age, like doing
no,
stuff?
Because I used to love going out on my push bike. But if it was a rainy day or winter, it was something I liked doing. And going back to my granddad was president of Leeds Model Railway Society.
Yeah.
So he had 3 steam engines.
Yeah.
That I ended up getting one of them when he died. Sadly, it was sold because my dad and my mother had no interest in it, and they couldn't afford to take it up to the railway tracks.
Yeah.
and run
Reminded
it.
me of Fred Dibner, because he used to like messing with steam engines, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I started with motorbikes and scooters. We used to have scooters.
Tinkering.
Well, getting in those days, you could go around and there'd be, if you asked around, there'd be somebody who got one in a shed that they hadn't used since.
Yeah.
We had all sorts. We had
Kind of play with it and make it work and that.
Yeah, we had a BSA. I can't think what it was, but it had a sprung back hub. It was ex-army. It was a big thing, a 650.
Yeah.
We could hardly get the damn thing to stand up. We were only small. This were about 14, 15.
Remember my dad was saying recently, I don't think he said it in the, I think he said it, I did record one the other day with him, but I haven't done anything with it yet. But he said that when his dad used to, his dad was a farmer.
Yes, yeah, I know. Oh, that's why I used to rib him about carrot crunching.
He'll like that. And but he said his dad really was quite into the engineering side of it as well.
Yeah.
He said when he got like one of the first combines in Lincolnshire.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, but the first thing he did was take it to bits.
Yeah.
So he wanted to know how it works.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite interesting because
my granddad on the other side, who worked for Fowler's, used to go with my dad. My dad used to tell me that he'd went autogyroing, steam, two steam traction engines, and they pulled the plough between them.
Right.
And they used to disappear off down to Lincolnshire for a month.
Yeah.
And live in one of these, like Fred Dimner's shed.
Yeah.
And my dad was only small. It must have been in the 20s.
Yeah,
so
the young
he'd
lad.
probably only been 10 or...
Wow.
And off they went down.
What an experience, eh?
Yeah,
Different world, isn't it?
Yeah, well, my granddad was did a bit of road testing for Fowler's.
Yeah.
And of course, Fowler's was a big company in Leeds. There was McLaren's, Fowler's, not the Formula One McLaren, Hunslet Engine Company, and Udswell Clark's. And
Big industrial stuff.
Yeah, they were building railway engines and stuff like that, So, I haven't said much about my mum, but when my granddad died, and she had to, because she was his personal secretary, was my mum.
Yeah.
So when he went, not only did his chauffeur get kicked out of work, but his wife got kicked out of work. My mum, who was his daughter, because the company was wound up.
Yeah.
So my dad went to work for Nicholson's, and my mum used to go and work as a secretary. And I remember she used to work for a company called Steam and Mining, and they were mining engineers and steam pipe work makers.
Yeah, proper industrial stuff, that, isn't it?
In Leeds then it was grotty. Oof.
Yeah.
It stunk. You could smell Leeds 20 miles away.
Stinky place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was Tetley's at one side, and they used to get rid of the smell. There were Yorkshire dyewear, and there was all the smells from that.
Dyes and things,
Yeah.
But that's stunk,
and then there was Cameron's Ironworks down making pipes and that. And of course West Yorkshire Foundry, and they did smell.
Yeah. So, it's amazing, isn't it, how much it's changed? It's all moved into different parts of the world, hasn't it, all that stuff?
Well, it has, but if you think about Leeds then, it was a very polluted city.
Yeah.
Very polluted. So the Clean Air Act and things like that were the first start of proper understanding of the
environment and that.
Yeah, environment, yeah. We've got a long way to go.
Oh, yeah.
But anybody who says it's... I don't think you're going to be able to catch it in time enough.
No, to prevent the issues it's caused, but it's still going to have an effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we've got to start somewhere, haven't we? Otherwise, the only planet we've got, isn't it?
Well, that's it. A friend of mine came from Australia. In fact, he was our best man, Jonathan, our best man, Paul, and he was here the other week, and we went to the Railway Museum, and we were walking around and we were reflecting on how much coal must have been burnt.
Yeah.
Because some of those express trains and goods locals.
Guzzlers.
Yeah, they had 2 tenders.
Yeah.
Just to keep them going.
Just shoveling it in.
Yeah. And
Wow.
Can
I ask you the last question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the meaning of life to you?
Happiness.
Happiness, yeah.
Yeah, happiness. I think that's meaning of life.
What gives you happiness?
Family.
Yeah.
Not really having to worry about things like you used to do when you were younger.
Yeah.
I'm not sure money's that important all the time.
No.
It's more the secret happiness in life is enjoying what you've got.
Being grateful for what you got and that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I think it's true. I love the garden. That makes me happy.
Yeah.
You know, all our hobbies make us happy.
Simple stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, but I'm not one for. I don't know. I don't. We watch TV, but we don't watch masses of it.
No.
But I think I don't have any regrets, but I would have liked to have travelled a bit more.
Yeah. Where would you have liked to have gone? That you've not been.
Well, there's not really anywhere I haven't been to that I don't really ever want to go to America. I've never been a fan of America.
No.
I like the Caribbean. I think I'd like to go to Japan.
It'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Different world again.
Yeah. Although, when we were at the Railway Museum, if you ever go, check out the Japanese train and you'll realise how small Japanese people are.
Yeah.
Because Paul used to work in Japan.
Yeah.
And he used to use the Osaka to wherever it was, Tokyo Express.
Yeah.
Bullet train. He says, believe me, you won't want to be on it more than an hour. So I said, what do you mean? He said, come on, get in it.
Bit cramped.
Because they've got one at carriages there. No, there's plenty of space, but the seat's so low.
Yeah.
So
your knees are bent.
Yeah, your knees are bent, but the seat leans forward. Incredibly uncomfortable.
Why do they do that?
Because they're travelling at 300 mile an hour and they're not on it long. I don't know.
Where's this railway museum?
In York.
In York, yeah.
It's free as well. It's good Yorkshire price.
Good Yorkshire price. Paying out.
Yeah, we went last week, on the Saturday.
Yeah.
It was good. It's full of tourists. It was.
I'll have to go down. I'll have to go and have a look.
Yeah, it's there's all sorts there, you know. And he's ended up being a bit of a geek. He's somebody I met through. Well, I met his sister first, and then I met Paul, and we became friends. And he had a scooter, and I had a scooter, and then we had cars and that. And then he went off to met an Australian and went off to live in Australia. But we've kept in touch all the time. Well, over a period. We lost touch for quite a while, but then...
As you do, you know.
Yeah. But interestingly, he says, we were looking at the engineering, and he had such a good knowledge of it. He did confess that he was a train spotter when he was younger.
Yeah.
But I pulled him because his scooter was tied together with bits of elastic and string.
Yeah, really?
You've never seen anything like it, you know. On a good day, it looked like it had just been dragged out of the river.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like working on stuff himself and making things...
No, not really. He didn't work on anything then. If it broke, it just got left until... But now he's got 3 7.5-inch steam engines that he loves and works on.
Wow.
Now he's retired.
He's got a hobby in that.
Well, there's a right railway set up in... He lives near my daughter in near Brisbane.
Yeah.
He used to live in Sydney, but they've got a railway society there, model.
Yeah.
It's about 2 acres is the pitch, and there's everything on it. Turntables, signal boxes, you name it.
Bloody hell. I think I know, remember Paul from work? Paul Mitchell? His dad's well into that stuff as well, I think.
Is he still there, Paul?
Yeah.
He's a nice lad. He
lad.
did peat packing.
Yeah, Pete left. Yeah, I can't remember now. It must be... I've got a shit memory, mate.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a terrible memory compared to you.
Well, what you've got to do is do what
A few years ago.
My boss told me when I went to start work. Tony said, get yourself a memory.
Get yourself a memory, yeah.
And he was serious. He had a great memory. And it's a good way to... Yeah. It's certainly good when you... Because if you have to refer to a piece of paper...
Yeah.
You've got to find that piece of paper.
Yeah. Find where you put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like... I don't know if it's the way the world is now, but it's overcomplicated maybe. And there's a lot
definitely.
There's a lot going on.
Definitely.
And I feel like that's something to do with it. Especially running your own business and like running your own, steering your own ship. It's quite complicated, isn't it? And a lot going on.
Well, I've got to ask you a question then. If you say, what's your meaning of life? What's the meaning of life for you?
Just to experience new stuff, I think. Yeah, and learn things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to learn, especially nowadays with all the resources people have got.
You better cut this bit out. Will you leave Pyramid at one stage?
Maybe.
Is there more of your dad in you than you think?
Yeah.
Because I was very impressed with his curriculum of what he'd done, his CV.
Yeah.
I knew he'd done stuff.
No, I think I'm interested in learning stuff all the time. I'm like him, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to. I don't need to cut that out. I think people know that anyway, where I work anyway.
Do they?
I say that stuff to Adam sometimes. It's like, let's do something else at some point, you know.
Well, you know the way to do it, don't you?
Well, no, I don't. 'Cause I've never done it.
No, what I mean is, you need to keep a hand in the business.
Yeah. I think, I feel like that.
You maybe need to keep a hand in the business, but you need to then reduce what you pay yourself.
Yeah, and what you're doing personally. Yeah.
And
that's my plan at the moment is to get other people to the level that I'm at with it.
Yeah.
So that they can do the job.
And then you come in and do a bit.
I do a bit more overseeing stuff. That's the ideal, I suppose.
Well, you've got to back your winners, haven't you?
The thing is, I've never done anything else, Rog. So it's hard to know. It's hard to know what you enjoy, isn't it?
I never did anything else.
No.
You
must have wondered a lot though in your time. Like, could I be doing something else?
Yeah. Well, if my uncle hadn't have got killed in Italy in the war, the Donald's engineering business that my granddad owned with his brother would have probably carried on, because Henry would have been the that's where I get my second name from, Henry. That was my uncle's.
Yeah.
It would have carried on.
Path would have been different, wouldn't it?
And probably if my mum had been a boy, or now a woman would take over that job. I've met quite a few women who've taken over engineering jobs and run foundries and stuff like that, very successfully.
Yeah.
But in those days, she's a woman, she won't be able to do it,
Yeah, different time, wasn't it?
Different time. And
now there's women doing all the different jobs, isn't there?
Yeah, well, she had the knowledge to learn, but she didn't have the opportunity, really.
Well, it should be.
But if that had been the case, I'd have been working in metal engineering, maybe not working anymore, because it's gone by the by.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I just count myself lucky that particular day I didn't get the job as a tailor's.
Yeah, it would have gone, wouldn't it?
And then I got the job in the plastics.
Whereas the niche of the plastics has sort of stayed true, and there's still a lot of people doing it.
It's evolving. And
yeah.
It just, all you need to do is look at what's going on around you.
It's a small industry here, but it's still thriving.
I think so, yeah. Because
all of that stuff.
There was a time many years ago when people said, well, you'll be out of work in 10 years' time. Injection moulding will take over because the Chinese were doing it. But they're not interested. You don't fill a container with one forming.
No, you don't know. You have to have all the different breadth.
And I know people who've gone all the way to China, been and eaten the sea slug and everything to get tools made.
Yeah.
Because that's what they seem to give you.
You can do it.
As a delicacy. Yeah, they did, but when they got the first batch of stuff, it was all wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Roger.
Yeah, okay then.
Should we end it there, shall we?
You can do, yeah. But I was ready to finish 3 hours ago.
You bugger. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, and you, Andy.
Really good. Thanks very much for listening to that. It's a long old episode, and it flew by while I was there though. I really enjoyed talking to Roger. It was great. So many funny and interesting stories and enlightening things as well. Just things to learn from, I suppose. And I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks very much, Rog. Be sure to follow the page, follow the YouTube channel, or follow the Spotify link, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is. You can also get it on Amazon as well if you want.
but I don't really know how you use that. I've never used Amazon before. But yeah, thanks for listening, and speak to you again in another one.